difficulties. Again, thanks to all that have joined. We're just waiting for everybody to take their seat virtually. Apologies, we started a couple of minutes late. We had a couple of technical difficulties. Okay. Okay, so I think that looks stable. Hopefully, we might have a couple of late joiners, but hopefully the majority are here. So thank you everybody for joining today. I am Kim Darrington. I work for the IUA, who are joining with ACORD and guest presenters from some of our members and also Ruschlikon participants and ACORD users. In order to bring you this presentation, it's a second in a series of 3. So we had one which is available, the recording on the IUA YouTube channel. Happy to provide details if you would like to see that. The first being more of an introductory session around preparing the London market for use of digital messaging and how that underpins further digitisation. This one looking more around the implementation of messaging and how you can do so modularly, excuse me, that's a very difficult word to say apparently. But really looking at some different use cases and exploring how you can go for quick wins and prioritising the problems or the issues that you may have in your own business, as opposed to going for an all-in approach, which would obviously be much harder work. So I just click myself on here. First one there is me, Director of Market Operations and Transformation. I will be saying very little, you'll be pleased to hear. But I am joined today by Clarissa Montecillo of ACORD and Tom Lucas from Carpenter and Kristina Hornikova from Swiss Re. And this just speaks to the previous session and some key takeaways, which I will let you read there for yourself because there are only a couple. And with all that said, I will then hand over to Clarissa, who is our first presenter.
Thanks, Kim. So today I'm going to talk about modular implementations of the ACORD data standards. For those that don't know me, as Kim mentioned, I'm head of global reinsurance and large commercial data standards at ACORD. Next slide, please, Kim. Sorry.
It's all right. I'm making myself useful.
3 clicks. So there's a little bit of misconception about what a data standard is. 3 clicks. One more.
Oh, apologies.
It's all right. We've jumped ahead. There's a little bit of misconception about what we mean when we're talking about data standards. There is a difference between data standards and a data dictionary, and most people focus on the data dictionary aspect. So a data dictionary is a catalogue or a glossary of data items. It includes its definitions, its types, its values, its lengths, formats, etc. And it speaks to the quality of data. So if people apply a single common data dictionary definitions, then you've got some, you start to move towards better data. A data standard incorporates a data dictionary, but it includes other things like how those individual data items relate to one another, and it defines how it's exchanged between 2 parties. And that's where ACORD really comes into its own. We talk about not just the individual data items, but how those data items interact with one another, how they relate to one another, and how it's used within a business process, and how it's shared between 2 or more parties. Data standards speak to not just the data quality, but ensures consistency and interoperability. What is ACORD? I think it's just one click. It might be 3 clicks. Might as well just click. So ACORD is a global not-for-profit organization that focuses on the development of data standards. Our purpose is to standardize data exchange and support digital transformation between two parties or between communities of parties. Kristina and Tom Lucas are part of members. Their firms are members of the Ruschlikon community, and we work very, very closely with them on developing the data standards through implementation communities. Next. So GRLC and Ruschlikon, which I've started to talk about already. GRLC is a branch of ACORD. So ACORD has various standards sitting underneath it. P&C, LMA, we focus on next-gen digital standards. So we've got a whole load of different branches that sit under the ACORD banner. GRLC is focused on commercial and specialty lines. So bread and butter of London market, but we are global, so we're not just London market. We speak to most of the firms that we work with are global firms, and we work really, really closely with the Ruschlikon Group to evolve and improve three standards under GRLC: the accounting standards, the claim standards, and the placing standards. Next slide, please, Kim. Already mentioned the placing, accounting, and claim standards. Click. Sorry, this works much better if I'm doing the clicking. So I'm going to start with accounting standards because that's where most of our implementations have occurred in the past. It's by far the most mature of our standards. It's better known as EBOT. So EBOT is the Ruschlikon endorsed implementation of the GRLC accounting standards. It's been developed in close collaboration with the Ruschlikon community. It's about probably 18 years going now. And it's focused on to automate and standardize the exchange of accounting and financial information between predominantly brokers and insurers, stroke carriers. Next. So not quite as old as the EBOT standard, but the claim standard works alongside the accounting standards and focuses on the claims loss and financial information. Again, it's predominantly around brokers and brokers communicating with insurers and reinsurers, but it does delve into other parties being involved in that chain. And it's the most well-known implementation of the GRLC claim standards is ACORD. And then another click. Placing standard. Placing standards, so GRLC has had a placing standard for as long as it's been running, so roughly 23 years now. But it's really come into its own over the last 3 or so years. The Ruschlikon Group in particular have been focused on defining how the data is exchanged across the placing life cycle. So all the way from initial submission through to post-bind structural information to facilitate the back office. Unlike the accounting and claim standard, which is very transactional, the placing standard works through the whole of the placing process being exchanged back and forth in a more chatty manner than the more transactional accounting standards or the claim standards. We're seeing now implementations either in pilot or in production, but it isn't quite as mature as the accounting standards. Next. So I'm going to take a breath while you're flicking. GRLC is modular by design. So we talked about those 3 standards. Do you want to just click a whole bunch and I'll just read through it? Well, not quite read through it. GRLC is modular by design. So when we're talking about those 3 standards, you can either implement just accounting, or you can implement accounting and claims, or placing and accounting only, or placing, accounting and claims. It really depends on where each implementer sees the most benefit. Again, the accounting standards are probably the most mature, but we're seeing a lot of implementations going live with placing first, or a lot of interest in adopting the placing standard. Traditionally, the implementations have been broker to carrier, but we're now looking at how we could implement those very same standards to other interactions within the insurance value chain. So we're starting to look at cedant flows, broker to broker flow, so inter-broker or co-broking situations, and we're looking at co-insurance lead and to co-insurers. That's using the same standards, the same data, the same schema, the same rules, but for different parties within that within the value chain. This would allow an implementer who, for example, a broker to a carrier, to extend that implementation to a cedant to broker. So utilizing the same infrastructure that's already been developed. And it allows a slightly enhanced, improved return on that investment. We also allow for, well, we don't allow, but the standards enable implementations depending on class of business, line of business, region, contract type. So it's not an all or nothing. So you could dip your toe in a area where you have perhaps on accounting high transactional volumes, or on placing if you wanted to just start with submission, for example. So the design of the standards is modular, and as you extend the scope of your implementation, the return improves. Next slide. So I've just stolen something from the internet there about why data standards are important, and it means that we're not all starting from scratch. It reduces the need for transformation and improves onboarding. Just do a bunch of clicks, Kim. So these are some of the reasons that I think there's one more. Is there one more? Yes. Some of the reasons why data standards are important. It allows for communication across organizations. It means you don't have to transform. You already know what each of those data points mean. Reduces the translation and reconciliation. If without data standards, you would have to redefine everything for every different implementer, which increases your onboarding costs for new partners. Because of that need to reconcile, there'll still be a dependence on some paper-based processing. The last two speaks to competition. I think, no, just the next one speaks to competition. A digital sorry, I've lost my train of thought. This is happening everywhere. So more and more organizations are looking to digitize their processes. And we as a market risks falling behind those other regions. I think that's me, Kim. Next slide. Is it me? Yes, it's me.
It's wrapped up very nicely.
Yeah, thank you. I think I'm handing over to Kristina, right?
You are indeed.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you very much. And before I start, I'd like to thank you for taking interest in the post-placement as part of a modular implementation of the standards. As Clarissa has mentioned, we also like to say in our community that implementing the standards is not a sprint, it's rather a marathon. And I can also add that it's highly addictive. So once you get one, you want more and more and more. And we also started with the technical only, then we added financial handling, claims, post-placement, which I'm going to talk about right now. Is one of the latest that we have productive. So on the next slide, I'm gonna tie together a little bit how it impacts the end-to-end life cycle. So as you know, you agree with your contract, you bind your contract with your parties, and then you see your party only at the moment when you receive your accounting information, whether it's a premium or a claims, and then followed by financial handling. Now, in between, what you have to do, because you have signed a contract and you're on a risk as a receiver, you have to set up these details in your accounting system. What your partner is doing in a very isolated manner is the same thing, setting up the contractual terms and conditions into his accounting system so he can provide you with accounting documents. Now, as this happens in, as I mentioned, isolated way with your partner and with you, you never know if there are any discrepancies in understanding, in the human errors, in the typos that might happen on the way. Maybe some parts of the contract were vague, not really understood the same way. And then your invoice comes, and what happens? Something's not matching. And this is exactly what the post-placement is taking care of. Click, please. It's bridging the gap between the placing and the administration. So you know the differences on the setup on the sender side and on your very own internal setup, because the message will show you exactly what your partner has set up, and you have it in your hands to cross-check it against what you have set up. Now, on the next slide, I'm going to tell you why we do it. As a sender has to set everything up correctly in his system in order to be ready for administration, it's not only rewriting the contractual conditions, but it's also creating an accounting structure for the documentation. So whether it comes in the layer manner, whether it comes in a section manner, whether there are more currencies agreed, this all had to be set up before any documentation, which is liquid, can flow down to receivers. Now, us as a receiver, this part of the contract is heavily manual. So we set up our accounting systems based on what we find in the contract, and with underwriting department and accounting department taking care of the different things, there might be moments when we fall into misunderstandings or discrepancies. If sender is sending us a complete copy of the structure of his setup, we can cross-reference it against what we have, and we can find out where is the difference. We can address this difference, whether it's internal or whether it's with our partners, and we can get ready for the next accounting step. And not only that, but we also take the referencing from partners' accounting system, we store it, and we use it for further automation when the general accounting documentation comes. So with this, I don't want to say that we completely get rid of any queries and discrepancies. No, we don't. I mean, it's always going to be there. We're just moving it from the moment when we actually have the liquid documentation in-house to the moment when we're setting up the ledger for accounting, and we can do it right the first time. What then happens is that when our invoices arrive, whether it's premium or any urgent claim, our contractual setup of accounting system is correct, and we can speed the cash flow. We can be this quick with the premium acceptance. We can be this quick with the claims acceptance. So then on the next slide, I just want to summarize that the post-placement message bridges the gap between placing and administration, because it carries the administration level information. It allows us to compare our accounting setup and the sender's accounting setup and highlight any discrepancies which we might have. It also encourages the users to reach out, whether we have internally did any mistake or whether it's our partners that did any mistake during the setup, and correct it before the accounting documentation comes. So what we like to say is that it reconciles the signed line for administration purposes on both sides of the coin. Now on the next slide, I think it's very important to say what we don't do with the post-placement message, because sometimes we fell into really wild thinking like, oh, but we could also do this and we could also do that. I mean, no, we cannot duplicate the placing process. This is not a substitution. The placing has to run before, whether you have it as an electronic placing or you have it as a regular chit-chat email, that still has to happen. We also don't source data from placing. We only source data from administration setup, because that is the basis for the accounting documentation release. We also don't use the post-placement message to update the ledger in any technical or financial way. So we don't twist the message to book UPRs, IBNRs, or any kind of reserving for us. And we don't create any liquid balances with us. It's purely an administration setup description message. And also very important to say, if the post-placement message arrives and for any reason we didn't have time to look at it and the accounting message comes, we always prioritize the accounting message. So we don't want to hold up the administration due to any reason. The liquid message is always a priority for us. Next slide, please. So within this nicely toasted process, I want to show you how it begins and how we get to a really nicely ready to use a toast. If you could do 3 clicks, please. Thank you. So on the sender side, once the sign down is finalized, the placing process is done. That's what I mentioned, that always has to be done. That's a precondition. Sender is preparing for accounting. So preparing any sections, layers, any multi-currency special conditions, anything, verifying his very own setup, and then finalizing it in his system. That basically triggers a message in the background that is being sent to Swiss Re. Now 4 clicks, please. And we receive the message into our workflow tool. Now, what happens on our side is that each and every message is linked to the ID created on our site. We can link it to insured period, we can link it to concrete section, even down to accounting classification level. We apply validations and we highlight discrepancies. And in the next step, we basically investigate these discrepancies. And this is what I already mentioned. It might not be always that the sender has something set up incorrectly. It might be that our very own people has done that. So we either reach out internally or externally. If it was sender, we would simply query the message and say, for example, we have 1.25 share, but your documentation says that you have set up 12.5 share. Please, could you check and correct? And sender will check, he will correct, and he will actually send us a correction message where we would see correction and we would know that it has been properly corrected. With accepting this message, we write down sender's referencing, so we can use that for further automation. And we also offer our referencing back to our sender so they can pick it up and use it when exchanging documentations with us, be it TA or be it technical or claims messages. Next slide, please. Thank you. So you're probably most interested in this one with the benefit realization. I do have some numbers and figures calculated as well, but before I say that, the majority of the benefit comes from qualitative advantages, which then reflect in the quantitative ones. So as I said, we're bridging the gap in between the placing and administration. And the great thing is that we have early contractual setup in our accounting systems. We don't have to await the liquid balance invoices to resolve any potential queries, but we move them to the resolving at the early stage, and then the accounting process can be faster and money can flow faster. Thanks to that, our data quality is better already at the stage of setting up the system. And we're also tying the post-placement close to e-placing because they share some of the attributes. And with doing the post-placement, we're actually helping our e-placing process in the future. I will have that mention later. One of my very, very favorite benefits is, and if you have not worked in accounting before, you might not realize that, but I've been in accounting for 8.5 years, and I know having an underwriting department and accounting department means that you don't always, you have different deadlines and you have a different way of work, and you don't always get that fast access to contract if you're an accountant. So with the post-placement message, what we assure with our partner is that post-placement message carries an attachment, which is the latest sound contract that the accountant can use in case he sees any discrepancies. He can cross-check directly from the contract that is received as an attachment to the post-placement message. And now with all this said, how were we able to improve our cash flow, right? So we've calculated that on the piloted portfolio, our median turnaround time has decreased from 14 days to 3 days. And this was thanks to eliminating more than 1,000 queries on the TA and claims messaging. And how we were able to do this is because we have a set of validations on a TA and claims messages, and we replicated these validations on a post-placement message. And when we took the portfolio, which did not have post-placement messaging incorporated, the median turnaround time was 14 days. Now, after 4 quarters of post-placement messaging, we were able to say that the turnaround time, the median value of turnaround time decreased to 3 days because the validations that were triggered on the post-placement message were resolved here, and the same validations were still on the TA and claim message, but they were not triggered because there was no error anymore. So thanks to this, we were able at the early stage get rid of more than 1,000 queries that might pop up later when we're processing our liquid balances. Next slide, please. And I have only 2 more. So what did we learn during our project? Some of the lessons we learned the hard way, some we learned the easy way, but basically you learn to have a close cooperation with your partners. It's not only us enhancing our systems, but also having our partners enhancing their system and them helping us then getting better with our system, because we would many times argue what's better, but at the end of the day, sometimes you have to have a certain risk appetite to say, okay, I'm able to accept this, and maybe it's very simplified, but it will work for me. And that's also what we learned with the data granularity. We love to work with the very, very granular data. If your partners work with a less granular data, it's gonna bring you many discrepancies along the way. So you need to find a way how to balance this. And again, bring your risk appetite to the moment when you realize you're not gonna be able to solve everything, 80-20 rule. So up to the level of information you really need, that's where you wanna be looking for the balance. What we also learned the hard way was that the market practice can cause quite challenging administration structures. If your portfolio is already running on e-accounting and claims, and it's a new portfolio, majority of the errors people did back then on the old contractual setup is not going to bother you, but you still have market practices which say, okay, on this contract I want to have 5 UMRs, and it's going to be sometimes painful for you to match it correctly and map it correctly. One of our great learnings was also that your level of automation comes at a setup cost. And I think this is a really good learning because you have it in your very own automation is in your very own hands. So if you know that your TA and claims have 3 main problems, share discrepancy, carrier discrepancy, and brokerage discrepancy, you could only do validation of those 3 on the post-placement message with a great focus. If we are really detail-oriented, we will also add other deductions. We will also add taxes. We will also add adjustment rates, reinstatement details, etc. So really your level of automation only depends on how much are you willing to validate and how much you want to validate. We also realized that our greatest benefit came only after our TA and claims, so EBOT and ECOD started running on the 2016-10 standard. Our post-placement message started already since the beginning on a 2016-10 standard, but back when we did it, there was an older standard applied on the technical and claims messaging, and we did not realize that basically there was one big change with regards to referencing that will impact us. But then once we received the balance on both TA and claim and post-placement standard, we realized that that's the best benefit we could get. It took us longer than expected, but we finally got there after the year of a pilot. Yeah. Also, if you are working with your partners, you are dependent on them and they are dependent on you. So planning for your resources and accepting their plan for their resources is a big learning that you have to count on. And the last one I want to mention is that back then when we started doing this pilot, there was no best practice in the plan. If you're interested right now, there is a best practice with thanks to ACORD. We were able to produce a really nice document. If you're an ACORD member, you could also go through it and you will find some nice examples with XMLs showing you the detail. It's all anonymized, so you don't have to worry about seeing something you should not. But you need to be an ACORD member to do that. So there is already a best practice in place. And my last slide is focusing on some of the IT stuff. The prerequisite is I would just run through this quickly because majority of this you already know. If you're exchanging any messages, you need compatible administrative systems that works with ACORD standards. You need compliant gateways, and at the end of the day, in order to be able to validate properly, you need to work with your vendors on your accounting module. So our accounting module has a specific validations embedded in them. Some of them we were able to reuse from TA and claims, that's what I mentioned, but some of them were not part of TA and claims validation, so we had to add them. I think at the end of the day, we added around 11 new validations just for the post-placement message. Yeah, with regards to some returns on your following messaging, right now we're doing e-placing, and I am in close cooperation with our e-placing team, exchanging the mappings we have done during post-placement implementation, and that is extensively helping them because we are able to reuse some of the classes of business or participation types or all these mapping tables we created during post-placement also for the e-placing. And the best benefit, as I mentioned already, for your e-accounting and claims comes with the post-placement going with them hand in hand. So the impact is just inevitable. Basically, you see that you could get the TA and claims processed much, much faster than before. Good. And then the operationalization. I strongly suggest you run a pilot. Whatever runs in a pilot is basically your proof of concept, tells you if it works for you, if it doesn't work for you, if it works for that portfolio or it does not. And one of also my great learning is this is a strong case for change management. The work of a people in digital era is it's terribly moving, it's changing. Not everyone is used to that. Not everyone is able to talk digital and act digital along the way. So involving people early, making them feel included, training them, that helps a lot. And it helps also for any of your future digital projects because they would understand much better. Also for the future, as we're modular, basically a knowledge from one you will reuse in all of the other modules. And that was my last slide, I believe. Thank you very much. I don't know if you take questions now or only towards the end.
We have a Q&A facility through which people can ask questions. I think it's probably better to wait till the end.
Perfect.
Largely because I'll help moderate that and I can't see it at the moment because I'm presenting.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Hi, I'm Tom Lucas, Guy Carpenter. Thanks for your time. And if we can just move to the next slide, Kim. So Guy Carpenter has been part of the Ruschlikon community for over 16 years. And in that time, we focused on the broker to reinsurer message with many of our partners. As we got closer to completing our transition to a single processing platform around the world for accounting and claims in 2024, we turned our attention to how we could utilize that platform and its API capability to accept and process B2B messages from clients who were able to send them in the ACORD standard format. The main driver behind this effort is to provide faster and better service to our clients by reducing friction in the process. And what that means to us at GC is minimizing the manual entry of data to reduce errors and improve quality, enhancing the security of that data transmission, and providing more capacity to our teams to address important issues for the clients and reinsurers. So as you'll note here on the slide, our 25% efficiency improvement reflects the reduction in time spent entering data manually for our teams. And the 35% figure represents the proportion of messages that come straight through the process, all the way to the point where the GC colleague just needs to confirm the transaction and send it out to reinsurers. And in recent months, that's ticked up to over 40% as we've made some changes in the process on our end. And we're also expecting more changes on the Hartford side to bring that up to an expected success rate of about 80%. So we're looking forward to that in the next couple of months. So if we can click to the next one. So as Clarissa mentioned, the accounting standards are very mature when it relates to the broker to reinsurer message. But the initial challenge we faced in this work was the fact that the cedent to broker B2B message was not actively being used in the market. The Hartford had been one of the only cedents sending outgoing B2B messages, so we partnered with them on this project. In order to receive and validate those messages, we needed to stand up a gateway, and our partnership with Web Connectivity and their enabled accounting application made this possible. The fact that Web Connectivity works with many of our reinsurer partners on their inbound B2B messaging proved that they had the necessary expertise and what would be required to do the same on the cedent to broker message. So once we got the project in motion, the first step was to really dig into the details of the message structure, confirm all the fields and values that both GC and the Hartford would need to get to a fully automated process. We also had to ensure that we were able to support all the acknowledgement messages to provide the Hartford with confirmations throughout the life cycle of the transaction. And I'll go into that a little bit later as we have a schematic on how the messaging actually works. Move on to the next one. So here is that schematic. So you'll see here what we do is the Hartford sends us the message and it comes into the Web Connectivity enabled accounting gateway. Immediately, as soon as that message is received, there's an L2 message that goes back to the Hartford, basically saying, we've got your message. The next step in the gateway is to verify all the data points in that message. And it's really just verifying that it's got the required message, the required data fields. Those data fields are in the right format, and it makes sense from that perspective, not from a business perspective. So once it's done that, the Hartford gets another acknowledgement saying, not only did we get your message, but everything in it seems complete. And now that message goes to the integration layer at Guy Carpenter. And what we do is we match that up against our accounting and claim system to find either it's an existing claim, and we're going to find that there's a new update on that existing claim that we need to put into the system, or it's a claim we've never had before. It's a first notice, but it's for a treaty that we have set up in our system. So there's a lot of matching logic that sits behind that, making sure that we've got something that that claim notice can attach to. Once it's matched, it's we now create an L4 message that would go back to the Hartford. Right now, we're not sending that L4 message. I think we're storing those currently, but that's a future implementation is to get that actually pushed over to the Hartford. in a real-time way. But we match that means that it's a valid business message that we can process and send to reinsurers. So after it's been matched, then the automated entry happens, and all the data, the financial, non-financial data, date of loss, everything about that claim is either loaded into OpenTwins for us as a claim movement, or it's creating a second update or a third update or fourth update to an existing claim. So basically just updating the financials and any other information that the client has given us at that point. So for the team at Guy Carpenter, all they have to do, they get the notification that the message came in and that it's been pushed into OpenTwins. They go into OpenTwins and see the final message. It's there, ready to be confirmed. They just click a button, and now the package is created. That package is ready to go out to reinsurers. And a lot of those reinsurers are getting B2B messages on the back of that. So when we send that package to Swiss Re, they're getting pretty much the same kind of message out of our system with the attachments that came with the message from the Hartford. If it doesn't match, we have an exception process. So that goes to the team who would normally be entering these manually. They then review the details. They do the manual entry in the system. They send out the notification, same way as we normally would. But then those non-matches go back to our automation team. We triage those, we review those, try and figure out why didn't it match? Is there something that we can do or the Hartford can do to address the situation going forward so we can get future matches to happen more regularly. Okay, if we can move on. So we have had a lot of lessons learned out of this initiative, which was expected since it was really the first time any of us were looking at the seed to broker message. First and foremost, I think we might be on the wrong slide there. Sorry. We can move forward. There we go. Sorry about that. So the first and most important lesson is that a review of the message contents must be done by all parties right up front. If there's any missing data fields, it could require development in the processing system, either in yours or in the receivers. And that can definitely take time, especially if you're working with a vendor. You'll want to ensure that you have aligned your reference numbers as well, since part of the matching logic is dependent on those references being accurate. We also had to work closely with our processing team here at Guy Carpenter so they understood what was happening behind the scenes. And that goes to what Kristina was talking about with change management. They could help us identify any issues that came up in testing or after implementation. They could identify, treaties that had special conditions that made automated processing more difficult. And we could kind of take those out of scope initially and then bring them back in as we learn more and we're able to develop more. So, but the team really needs to see this as a help to them, taking away some of the more routine work that doesn't add value. So that's a really big selling point for the team is making sure they understand this is taking away the things that they probably don't look forward to every day, but they have to get done, and then letting them work on some of the more interesting stuff that comes with working with a client. But once it's all set up, you'll start to see the benefits right out of the gate. As my lights go dim. Again. Okay, if we can move to the next slide, please. Nope.
This is the slide.
Yeah, there we go. We'll stop on that one. Okay, for a little more context around all this work, we went live in October 2024, and we used our first quarter 2025 data to do this analysis. So it only includes the claim movement messages right now, and we're working with the 2012-02 standard for that message. But the gateway is capable of accepting 2016.10 messages, and if anybody is able to send those and receive those. Because of the improved efficiency and effectiveness of the process, our outlook for the rest of this year and beyond is to continue expanding messaging to any clients who are able to send the ACORD standard messages. And we're also working with other partners to develop the technical accounting messages to be able to support premium and pro rata transactions sent by cedents. That one's going to be a little more difficult. Everybody has a different view, and again, because nobody's really doing that right now, we're kind of in the the early stages of developing exactly what a pro rata message should look like. Should it be at a reinsurer level from the client? Should it be at 100% level? Those kind of things. Trying to understand what it should look like. But the work that we've done on claims is really allowing us to look forward and see where else we can do this. And again, as Kristina said, it's modular, right? So we're working on claims, but you can translate a lot of that information and that learning into the other areas for different types of transactions. So, and then one more piece of data that's not on here. We just recently did an analysis for the Hartford to see, what kind of difference this is making for them. And we found that we've had a 57% increase in turnaround time on all claim messages across the board, not just the ones that are going through the B2B process, but even the ones that fall out as exceptions. And it's really because the team has more time to be able to dedicate and focus on those, in addition to all the other things that they do for the client. So we've seen a really good improvement in our processing, and the Hartford is seeing that as well. And we're just looking to bring that to other clients who are ready or near ready to send us an ACORD message. Okay, and I think that's it for me. Over to you, Kim.
Right. Well, thank you so much. And what I'm going to do is, having done a rather mediocre job of sharing slides, I'm going to stop sharing so that I can see if there's anything in the Q&A yet. Doesn't appear that there are any questions. So I will, for a moment, just get the ball rolling with one that occurred to me. And then if our audience have nothing further, we can look to start wrapping up. So you talked about the different message types being like placing, accounting, and claims, and how you can apply those and deploy them modularly. Managed it this time. One thing that I did notice in the different presentations was that you also talked about, say, 2012 2 and 2016 10 message types, and I wondered if somebody could take a moment to explain what the difference between those is and maybe how they operate within the whole infrastructure.
Shall I take that?
Please do.
So ACORD, every time we make a schema level change, there is a version up, a new version of the standards release. The current latest version of the standard is for accounting and claims is the 2016-10. So it refers to the schema. The major change in 2016-10 was the two-way query flow. So that's the most significant difference between 2012 and 2016. ACORD supports generally or maintains the current version plus the previous. The versions do work together. So Tom is using 2012 for the cedant flow and 2016, I believe, for your outwards, right? Not for your outbound messaging.
Yeah, that's right.
So that's where the difference lies. I think between 2012 and 2016, the rules were changed for I believe it's broker section reference, which was what Kristina was talking about. So we tidied up the rules for provision of broker section contract section reference. So it's just different versions of the standards. It depends on they will work. The schema is more or less very, very similar between them. It's just with each new release, there is potentially an additional attribute or some tightening up of the rules.
So if you're using an older message type, you may just enjoy less rich functionality. That's how you. It's going
to be partly dependent on the version that your partner's on. I'm assuming, Tom, that you chose 2016-12 because that was the version that Hartford were using.
Yeah, that's correct. Yep.
Yeah. Generally, a new implementer would try and start with the latest version because there is more functionality, or not really functionality, it's messaging. There's more, the rules are tighter, or it allows for more use cases. So,
okay, well, thank you for taking the time to explain that. And I'm just checking the Q&A. We still don't have any further Q&A from the audience. I mean, I could sit here and ask you questions all day, but I thought an inquisition from me is perhaps not the most beneficial thing for everybody's afternoon. So I will just give one last call out to the audience to see if they have any questions, and if they don't, we can look to wrap up. Oh, okay. Right, so no questions from the audience. In which case, I'd like to take the opportunity to thank all of you for coming along to present today and explain a little bit more about how to practically implement ACORD messages and how that's worked in your different organisations and with the different use cases that you've presented. And just to note for our audience members that these slides will be available after the presentation, and that there is a follow-up presentation on the 28th of October, which talks about a particular use case whereby the implementer has used all of the messages and now has an end-to-end workflow based around that digital transmission of data. So please do join us for that if you have the opportunity. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.